Hey, it's Jordan with Status Coup. Breaking news in the Breonna Taylor Louisville police cover-up. As you know, I went to Louisville multiple times to cover this cover-up when the corporate media was completely moved on from it. And finally, there seems to be some justice happening for Breonna Taylor, who was murdered while sleeping in her apartment. The One of the police officers who was part of her murder and helped cover it up, has pled guilty to the cover up. A former Louisville detective is expected to plead guilty on Tuesday to helping to falsify a search warrant that led to the killing of Breonna Taylor, a Black woman whose death fueled a wave of protests over police violence against people of color. The former officer, Kelly Goodlett, is scheduled to appear at 1 o'clock before U.S. District Court Judge Rebecca Grady Jennings in a federal court in Louisville. She is expected to be arraigned and to enter her plea. Goodlett was one of 4 former Louisville Metropolitan Police Department detectives charged by the U.S. Justice Department on August 4th for their involvement in the 2020 raid that killed Taylor. The charges represent the Justice Department's latest attempt to crack down on abuses and racial disparities in policing following a series of high-profile police killings. The killing of Taylor, along with the other 2020 killings of George Floyd in Minneapolis and Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia, among others, sparked outrage and galvanized protests that peaked in intensity during the summer. Taylor, a 26-year-old emergency medical technician, was asleep with her boyfriend on March 13th, 2020, when police conducted a no-knock raid and burst into her apartment. Taylor's boyfriend fired once at what he said he believed were intruders. 3 police officers responded with 32 shots, 6 of which struck Taylor, killing her. Goodlett and a fellow former officer, Joshua Janes, met days after the shooting in a garage where they agreed on a false story to cover for the false evidence they had submitted to justify the botched raid, prosecutors say. Goodlett was charged with conspiring with another detective to falsify the warrant that led to the raid and then cover up the falsification. Federal prosecutors also charged Janes and current Sergeant Kyle Meany with civil rights violations and obstruction of justice for using false information to obtain the search warrant. A 4th officer, former Detective Brett Hankison, was charged with civil rights violations for allegedly using excessive force. In March, a jury acquitted Hankison on a charge of wanton endangerment. A grand jury earlier cleared the other 2 white officers who shot Taylor, but charged Hankison for endangering neighbors in the adjacent apartment. So there's a lot to get into here. First of all, a grand jury, when Reuters reports a grand jury earlier cleared the 2 other white officers who shot Taylor, but charged Hankison, that's not completely true. For those that have followed this story, remember, the state attorney general, Daniel Cameron, the Kentucky attorney general, happens to be pretty close and connected to Mitch McConnell. He lied when he announced that there would be no charges against the officers other than wanton endangerment, which is pretty minor in Kentucky law. He lied and said that the grand jury had decided not to charge the officers. Pretty rare for grand jury members to speak out because it's supposed to be a secretive process. But in this case, grand jury members came out saying, we did not find that these officers were innocent, but Daniel Cameron, the Attorney General of Kentucky, tied our hands. On Monday, one of the jurors took the extraordinary step of filing a court motion to make transcripts of the grand jury deliberations public and allow its members to speak publicly about how they unfolded, according to the New York Times. Grand jury deliberations are subject to strict secrecy, and the evidence they consider usually only becomes public in court if there's prosecution. The unnamed juror claimed that Cameron had misrepresented the jury's case to the public and that the jurors were never given the option to indict officers Mattingly and Cosgrove. If true, this would appear to undermine Cameron's claim that the jury was unanimous that Taylor's death was legally justified. It also casts more doubt on his earlier accounts. Cameron's claim that the officers clearly identified themselves and therefore weren't executing a no-knock warrant is supported by the testimony of the officers themselves and one witness, a neighbor of Taylor's. But roughly a dozen of other neighbors claimed to not have heard anything until the police battered in Taylor's door. And investigative documents recently obtained by Louisville Courier-Journal show that the AG's lone non-police witness originally said they heard nothing, only changing their story months later when investigators circled back for another interview. So here you have the Kentucky Attorney General presided over a cover-up. The grand jurors were not actually even given the option to indict two of the officers that shot at Breonna Taylor with involuntary manslaughter, third degree, nothing. They weren't given that option. But Daniel Cameron went out and he claimed that the grand jury found that their actions were legally justified. So although it's a good thing that the Department of Justice ruled against these officers and charged them with crimes, including civil rights violations and other crimes, it kind of just shows you this doesn't always happen. Remember, the DOJ under Obama and then Trump did not follow through and pursue charges against Officer Daniel Pantaleo, the Staten Island cop who strangled Eric Garner to death. There's been many cases where the DOJ did not do the right thing and charge these officers who murdered unarmed black men or women. But in this case, the Kentucky Attorney General lied to the public, covered up the truth, protected his officers who assassinated this woman. And it's only because the DOJ stepped in that we even know about this secret garage meeting between officers to put forth a false story, falsifying the no-knock search warrant, which they put in false information to get a judge to sign off on it. Why weren't these things found by the Kentucky State Attorney General's investigation? Well, you can't find what you're not looking for. So where is the investigation into Daniel Cameron and his state investigation? The DOJ is just going to let that slide? I digress. But Status Coup, when the rest of the media had long moved on from this story, we went out to Louisville. We spoke with Breonna Taylor's aunts twice. I want to play some of those clips, which go into detail about the cover-up that finally an officer is pleading guilty to. Let's take a look at the first clip.
There's a cockiness with the police, like where the people are complacent here. Like things like this have been happening forever, right? Like there is people still right now today for years have been waiting on a plethora of video and all kind of stuff where they just feel like they don't have to do anything. We don't have to give you anything. Like, mind you, this happened on March 13th. Like, it didn't blow up until May something. They still hadn't filled out a police report. They still hadn't put out anything because they don't feel like they have to. This man literally lied to a judge. Where's the judge at? The judge has not demanded like nothing to happen to this man. None of this. Like he literally took a whole affidavit, signed out to her, and she said yes, and it gave him 5 no-knock warrants under this lie. And she still haven't said anything to be nobody to be charged or nothing for that lie that caused somebody's life or anything like that. Like that's crazy. Like, and I feel like even the governor, Andy Beshear, sits there quiet and don't say anything about none of this. Nothing. Like, please don't bring me in this. Like, he don't have anything to say at all. This whole city is like a mess, a whole mess. I feel like the police, they just sit here cocky. Oh, we just gonna wait this out. Like, it's over. So now we can just go back to being business. Oh, we gave them $12 million. They should just shut up and just like, don't say anything else. Like they've been doing this stuff to these people. These people just don't say anything. They just let it happen and just be like, why should we fight? I think,
to be honest with you,
yeah.
I think the city, it's been happening so much, they're scared. They don't know how to go about even pursuing justice. You know what I mean? Like, whereas they thought COVID was going to sweep Breonna under the rug. That's what they thought was going to happen. Like, oh yeah, shut the city down. You know, we got this deadly virus out here.
Blame Kenny. We're going to railroad Kenny, and that's going to be that. But you can feel like through the whole COVID, you can feel the tension. You can feel the buildup, and I could feel it like in the air. Like I can tell that it was going to be something, and you can just like the atmosphere was. The shift in the atmosphere was totally different. And then all of these things just started happening through COVID. Like we're still like being victimized through COVID. This is crazy. Like, everybody's supposed to be in the house. How are we still being murdered?
Currently, Joshua Jane was fired for lying on a search warrant.
Police officer.
The police officer, Joshua Jane, he was currently fired, which now he is, what do you call it? He has his, I can't think of the word.
He's spoken out against
Yeah,
basically blowing the whistle.
Basically a review, like to get his job back. So he's currently had one session, and I think his next hearing is on the 24th. So I think it's this coming Friday. And just the audacity for him to even go in front of a board to ask for his job back is just crazy. Especially after you lied on a warrant that cost my niece her life. You know what I mean? So
And what was his lie on the warrant?
he lied and said that she was receiving packages to her apartment, that that there was packages coming to that address. So and that after the post office, the chief of the post office stated that there was a lie, he continued his lie, mind you. So yeah.
We went back when no one was covering this anymore. We went back a year after she was murdered. We went back then again, okay? Because we stay on the story, win, lose, or draw. Support this reporting if you can. StatusCoup.com/join. You could become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month to support real on-the-ground journalism. There is no true justice. Breonna Taylor is gone. Her family is never going to have her back. They would 100% trade away whatever money they got civilly to have their niece back, daughter, etc. But I am glad, in the rare case, the Department of Justice stepped in and prosecuted these officers. Now it's time for them to actually prosecute the state of Kentucky's Attorney General, Daniel Cameron, for helping to cover up on behalf of the police the murder of a 26-year-old Black woman.